Good evening. My name's Alex Davidson, and I'm one of the cinema curators at the Barbican. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this special live Q&A with the director of Retablo, Alvaro Delgado Aparicio. Although the Barbican cinemas may sadly be closed for the time being, we have just launched Cinema on Demand, which is the Barbican's VOD streaming service, where you can see new films, new releases, as well as some special one-off titles and film seasons, all curated by the Barbican cinema team and by selected partners. Now, back in 2019, we launched a new cinema strand called Forbidden Colours in the Barbican cinema, which celebrates really great cinema made about LGBTQ people in areas of the world where queer people face societal oppression or prosecution and still struggle for equality. And since the launch, we've shown films from Poland, from Guatemala, from Vietnam and Indonesia. But the film that kicked it all off was a Peruvian film called Retablo, which sold out at the Barbican. It's won dozens of awards around the world. And earlier this year, it was nominated for a BAFTA. And we're really lucky to be joined by the director of Retablo, Alvaro Delgado Aparicio, who is joining us from Lima in Peru for this ScreenTalk. So, hi, Alvaro, how are you?
Hello, Alex. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. Thanks for having me and the film in this amazing space.
Well, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. It's a really great opportunity. And if anyone has any questions for Alvaro, then please do leave them in the comments below. Alvaro, I think I'll just kick off with some questions of my own. And before we even get into Retablo, I thought I'd like to ask you a little bit about your film career in film so far, because Retablo isn't your first time behind the camera. So could you talk a bit about some of the other work you've done in cinema beforehand?
Well, actually, my Retablo is my first feature film. For that, I did 2 short films. The latest was called Companion, that was premiered at Sundance, and that's it. I actually didn't study film. I graduated from organizational psychology at the London School of Economics, and then I've been working as an organizational psychologist for many years. And then I also did a course at the London Film Academy, film directing course. And I've been writing. And suddenly, when I did this film, The Companion, this short film, it went to Sundance, it went to Rotterdam, it did very well. And I remember when I was at the Sundance Film Festival, after the 4th projection of the film, there was Q&A, the Q&A finished, and suddenly I was walking and somebody said, hello, and I did like this, and it was Mr. Robert Redford. And he asked me, where did you study film? And I said, at the London School of Economics. And he said, you haven't studied film? No, I did a couple of courses, that's it. No. And then he talked to me about this possibility, this amazing thing that they do at Sundance about the Sundance Lab, that you have to apply with a script. So I was invited to apply, and 6 months later, I was living actually in Boston, and they told me that I got in, and I went to this amazing lab at the Sundance retreat, and with 12 mentors. I remember I went with my script of 120 pages, and suddenly I only had a paragraph left. And then I started rewriting, and suddenly Retablo emerged, and that's how Retablo was born.
Wow. And when it went from that stage to actually to filming Retablo, whereabouts in Peru was it filmed?
Retablo has been filmed in Ayacucho, which is in the Andes of Peru. Yes, an amazing, beautiful city where a lot of things are happening there. And we used to go outside the city, in the outskirts of Ayacucho. So I've been living in many, many different communities and on the countryside. And we met such an amazing group of people everywhere.
And how did you immerse yourself in the communities? Because in the film, you get this real beautiful sense of the community that's there. How did you achieve that?
Yes, it's really interesting because, how was the film conceived? I remember that when I started with the project, I was really interested in father-son relationships. That's how it started. And I was very interested in, sometimes when you're a teenager and you're growing up and you idealize your father or your mother, and suddenly they do not turn up how you imagined. And what do you do with that? No. And also on the other on another thing that I was really interested in, sometimes when you're in a very strong relationship with your father or your mother, and you want to look for freedom, but dependence is stronger, and you stay and you don't go to become free. No. So I was working on that, and on parallel, I was very obsessed with the retablos, which are these in English is called altarpieces, but they are this sophisticated Peruvian folk art, that express or depict religious, historical, and everyday events. And in English, there's no specific translation. I call it story boxes. Boxes that tell stories, no? And I always used to see these boxes as a portals of life, no? And sometimes when you contemplate these boxes for more than 5 minutes, suddenly you start realizing that there is a lot of information that previously you took for granted, and you start telling a story, So I was with those three ingredients, and the story boxes actually were born in Ayacucho. So that took me to the geography. And when I started the investigation there and the research, I used to live with a group of maestros, storybox makers. And I remember the first time that I was there, and the first week, and I learned from, sometimes observing. There are these amazing artisans that are very introverted people, and observe life, and suddenly they realize something that moves them, and they will do it. And one day, this maestro told me, the difference between you and me, it's not that much. You have a camera, but I have a camera inside my head. So when I walk through the Andes and I see beautiful things or horrible things, I take a mental image, and I try to represent that in the best way I can, And it's really interesting, because for me, cinema is not only about projecting images, but it's also about repairing images. And that was the metaphor I had in mind to repair the image of this son, the protagonist in the film, that has of his father. So, of course, when I started then working in the communities, I remember it was very, very complex at the start, because you go there and you meet some people, and you say you would love to shoot in this certain place, and you go through different types of rituals. I remember the first ritual, they told me, there's a mountain over there. Okay, there's a mountain above that, and a one above that. Okay, go there, and there will be a woman, a very interesting woman of 70 years old, that will invite you some breakfast, some cuy. And depending on whether you eat well or you have a good relationship with her, she will do like this or like this, and you will be able to present your project to the assembly of this community. So thank God she did like this. With a producer and the team, we went to this community and did this project. They presented this project, and we took our laptop and like our PowerPoint and explaining. And there were like 70 people there in this first community, and they all had a really beautiful smile. And they spoke in Quechua, and then they said to us, "Oh, this looks amazing, your project, but you're not allowed to shoot here." And we didn't understand why. And then, of course, we were like the foreign people that were entering into their spaces. So because we were living for a year before we shot there, we started developing good relationship with the community. We started to understand what did we represent for them. And some things that we got was that they thought that when we were filming, we would appropriate the land and we will never go out. That's why, but after many experiences and great experiences. They ended up even being extras in the film and helping us in many things of the film, and it's been a really, really good experience.
And you said that they spoke Quechua. Do you speak that language yourself?
No, not at all. When I was there, I realized that I was the foreign one. Not only the whole team. And actually, when before we started rehearsals, Magali Solier, the one that plays the mother in the film, said to me, "We should do this film in Quechua." No, and of course I said, that looks, and it's conceptually it's interesting, but I don't know how to direct in Quechua or edit in Quechua and the team, no. So I had this idea going on, and one day I like to play a lot. So with my 3 actors that you see in the film, we used to play a lot through the scenes. And one day I asked them, why don't we do the scene in Quechua? Just let's play with it, no? And suddenly something magical happened. It was like they were playing the scene, their characters from the gut, not from their head, from their gut. No, it's like right now I'm translating quickly in English things that I'm thinking in Spanish. No, and these actors were like they were translating in Spanish something that they spoke in Quechua because their mother tongue was Quechua. And it's really interesting when you work with actors. They are bringing things to the table that you previously don't even realize, no? So we played that scene all over again, and then I went to my producer and the team, and I said, we have to do this film in Quechua. And everybody said, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? This is not going to work. It's your first film. We're already filming in 4,300 meters above sea level. How are you going to edit? How are you going to direct? How are you going to do? We only have 8 weeks left before the shooting. Are you mad? No. So I went back to my actors and I said, shit, what are we going to do? And Junior, actually, the one that plays the kid, he said to me, like, why don't we invite them tomorrow and to a rehearsal? And let's do 3 scenes in Spanish. And then we'll do the same 3 scenes in Quechua, and let them see what we're, doing. So we did that, and suddenly after the 3rd scene we did, everybody was clapping, and he said, okay, whatever, let's do it in Quechua. We brought these 2 amazing translators to help us. And I think in retrospect, 2 years later or 3 years later, I can say that's the best decision we did. For many reasons. No, the first reason is because the kid he was casted from 750 children, teenagers. No, and he has never even acted in his house, even in the school or whatever. No, and just to play the scenes in Quechua, it gave him a lot of familiarity. He speaks Quechua with his mother and with his grandmother and his family. So, and Magali speaks Quechua in her home, and Amiel, the one that plays the father, also speaks Quechua. So that was one thing, no? But the other thing is that while I was living there, I realized that our film was also the complex. It's a film about the complexity between tradition and modernity.
Yeah,
and I think actually, yes. And also with that. And it was really interesting because when you're in the city of Ayacucho, everybody speaks Spanish, and you go out of the city, everybody speaks Quechua, and then you find in different spaces of Ayacucho that they speak Quechua-ñol, which is the mixture between Quechua and Español, which is Spanish. And I know all these were ingredients that were telling us do it in Quechua, no?
I mean, you touched on some of the themes of the film in your response then, and I wanted to ask to develop a couple of the subjects that are explored. One of the most obvious ones is sexuality, and in particular same-sex attraction. For people outside of Peru, could you just comment a bit about what the situation is for LGBTQ people in Peru at the moment?
Well, I still don't understand why there is no equal rights in our country as in other countries. I believe that love is love, and I still understand that. And if in Lima is complicated, when you go out of Lima, the capital, is even more complicated. And I think that is a problem. No, but it was interesting when we were started to research this theme in outside Lima. Let's not about before talking about homosexuality. You don't talk even about sexuality. Yeah, right. When you go to these spaces, everything is like a taboo subject. That is sexuality is about taboo subject. You don't talk about it, no, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult, no. You know, it's really interesting when we premiered the film in Peru. I remember the national premiere. Junior, the star of the film, went with his mother, the father, and his brothers. And of course, the mother, when she saw the film, was like in shock, no? And I remember, firstly, she was in shock because it must be very difficult for a mother to see a son in a screen, right, doing all the things. So you don't see that, you don't understand the story. You just trying to understand the difference between fantasy and reality. So 2 days later, she went to see the film again, no? And then she understood the story, and it was interesting because I was speaking to Junior days later, and he said to me, you know, my mother asked for a meeting between all my brothers, and the first thing she said was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry because we've never talked about sexuality in a house. And when we see a film in a TV screen and there is a man or a woman even having a kiss, everybody normally looks down. It's like you cannot feel that moment, no? And she was saying, I'm so sorry, and that's what she learned with Retablo, you know. So when I mention about sexuality as a taboo, yes, it's not something that you talk that much, especially in those particular communities which are very traditional. Everything is much more black or white, no? Yeah. Everything is much more conservative, and there's a particular norm of how behavior is done, or social behavior is done, no? Yeah.
We've just had a question in, which is speaking to some of the things you're talking about. This is from Carolina Pelican, who says, "Hola Alvaro, congratulations."
Hola.
Forgive my Spanish accent. Congratulations on this fantastic and important film. We screened Retablo with Cine Latino, London in February. One question that kept emerging in discussions with our audience is, how would you describe the impact films like Retablo can have on our conservative Peruvian society, and what it can do for the Peruvian LGBTQI community? So I just wanted to mention that while you were responding to the last question, because it does touch on similar ground.
Yes, I mean, the first thing I can say that there's so many things I can say about this, but I'm super proud of it. I remember when we were we premiered at Berlin in 2018 in February, and we had our national premiere in Peru in May last year, 2019. And I remember that months before the premiere, the national premiere, a lot of people were saying that this film will not do well, you know, a little ketchup film. Of course, it had a lot of awards, a lot of international buzz, but still in our country, it was not going to work. You know? But suddenly, when it was launched, it was like 9 weeks there. It was sold out everywhere. Even in the provinces outside Lima, it was started to be played, no? And it was because people were demanding the film, no? And actually, it did very well. Actually, at the end of the year, it also won the best national film, and there was what do you say? a title, a headline saying this is the first Peruvian LGBTQ film that wins the national film award.
Yeah.
And of course, the LGBTQ community has been amazing in the response of this film. It has embraced it. It has brought it also to the table to start speaking about things. And not only the LGBT community, a lot of many other communities. Like it's so powerful how cinema can bring stories to life that can help you sometimes see things in a different light, or understand things, or be more empathetic with the other. And we have been receiving so many emails and letters about parents having difficult conversations with their kids, and how the film has helped them to have these conversations. In general, we have received also a lot of letters and emails about kids that wanted to go out of the closet, but through the film, it helped them to have this conversation with their parents. So I think it has contributed a lot. It's not sufficient. There has a lot to be done yet. I think it's complex, because what we were seeing also in these communities, and not only in Peru, in many countries, is how sometimes we live in such a toxic masculinity culture, and that in itself frames teenagers and young people to think in certain ways, and that's very complicated to eradicate as well. So when we were doing the movie, we were always thinking how a sensitive boy can make it in this particular micro universe. What are going to be his choices? What is going to be his life? How can he fight for his own voice? So those were the questions that with the team we were constantly asking ourselves, and that's why we thought that it was an important story to tell.
I think the comment on masculinity is really interesting, particularly now, is because at the Barbican in the gallery we currently have an art exhibition which has just reopened actually after months of lockdown, called Masculinities, which is all about how masculinity is depicted and coded and represented through photography and film. And I think Retablo is very interestingly alongside that in some ways. And I think it's really great how you have the representation of both toxic masculinity, but also a very sensitive and interesting masculinity with the father and the son. And I think it's brilliant that so many people have responded, like queer people in Peru have responded positively to the film, because although, and I wouldn't use the word bleak to describe the film, although there are some very harrowing moments, but it actually does end on a note of optimism, which I think is very welcome. I mean, we actually got a new, actually it's a comment rather than a question from Natalia. It says, "Wow, Alvaro, congratulations! I love hearing the story about your journey in making this film." So I just thought
Hello, Natalia. I studied with Natalia at the London School of Economics. Hello, Natalia.
Yes, so I think the masculinity issue is one that's really beautifully represented in the film. Have you shown the film in any of the areas where you filmed Retablo in the Andes?
I mean, our plan initially was to start having a tour in the communities on October of last year, and then we were representing our country in the Oscar race, so we had to postpone that, and we were going to start doing that on March this year, and we had everything already done, and suddenly the lockdown and the crisis started, and we have moved it, so we haven't yet. there's a lot of people from the thing that our crew was from there was really huge. They were able to come to Lima to see it, no. But no, we haven't. I mean, our plan to go to the local communities and with our inflatable screens and all that we wanted to do with our producer, we haven't done it yet. No.
Well, soon, I hope. Well, certainly in the foreseeable, I hope that happens.
Yes, definitely. Something that that's the last thing we have to do to close this whole circle.
Yeah. Another element of the film that is interesting is on the other side of related to masculinity, and it's the toxic side of representation in the film. It's misogyny, because the way the men talk about some of the female characters is pretty shocking at times. But the character of the mother I find really fascinating in the film, and I think the actress gives such a great performance. And she's not always sympathetic, the mother character, but she's always strong, and there's a lot of agency in the film. Could you talk a bit about the characterization of the mother and how you created her?
Yes, of course. Yes, it's a beautiful character. I mean, I always was thinking of the relationship between the father and the son, but for the father and son to do what they do, they need to be facilitated not only by an amazing person is the mother. I mean, it's because of the mother that they can go to the land and look for potatoes and craft their art and do what they do. No, it is the mother that they can be fed. They have a space. The mother actually is the one that contains everything. But it's also the mother that is a very strong character because she has a voice. She has a voice of deciding what's good and what's bad, and she's handicapped though, no, and that's why she cannot get out of that space. I mean, it's not that easy for her to cross the mountains, and that's why she's there. But is the character of Anatolia, played by Magali Solier, beautifully played by Magali Solier. She's really in love and idealizes also her husband. No, she sees him as somebody that has not been contaminated by the toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
She also sees him as somebody that is an artisan, a famous maestro in the levels of the hierarchy of religion. So and also when we were playing, we were thinking of the backstory of her. Also, it's somebody that's in love with this amazing maestro that actually is in love with her as how she is, because she's handicapped, and but he loves her in a total way, and of course the way they live, she believes that they are artisans, not peasants.
Yeah.
And in their own bubble, they are in a different level of everybody else, and that's what and she's part of creating that bubble. They have a role in the community. They have a role in how certain festivities are done. She's recognized as a good mother, a good wife. She has a position in the society, but she has a voice. And of course, the drama with her is that if that bubble bursts, her whole identity falls as well. So yeah, that's how we characterize the role of the mother.
And I hate to say this, but we're actually running out of time, so I only have time for one more question. So sorry about that. And it's about endings.
Yes, we're still warming up.
No, there's so much to talk about in the film. This is the tragedy. My last film actually is about endings, which seems appropriate. Like for me, I interpret the ending as one of mild optimism. After all this tragedy and horror that the son has gone through, for me there is an element of optimism at the end. Would you agree?
Yes, of course. The only thing that I was certain, even before I finished the script, was the last scene. That the last scene is the only thing that has kept in all this history since we did the screenplay, we shot the film, we edited it. It was always consistent, no. And it's because we always wanted to see the coming of age process of a sensible boy turning into an adult, no. But also about a character that can repair the image of his father, and at the end of the day, love is the most important thing, not what you expected somebody. How to tolerate the other is so complicated, no.
Yeah.
And to accept them as how they are is also very complicated and has a different rhythm, and he had his own rhythm and he got it, no. But in that last scene, I always knew that it was about this boy turning into an adult that goes out of the workshop, closes the doors like if it would be a retablo, and we, the audience, stay inside.
Yeah.
Because for me, the question is now we, the audience, have to figure out our own retablos. And I think that's hope. That's life. No, that's the story of this film. And whatever happens afterwards with Segundo, I know that he will do well.
Yeah.
He will do well because he found his own voice and he found his own identity and he found himself. No. And I think that's the most important thing for a human being to find. And no society should never let them, no society should let them complicate that. Societies should facilitate that, and people should facilitate that. And that, I think that's why there's so much hope at the end of the film, for me at least.
I think it's a really beautiful ending to a really powerful film. And we have one more comment actually from Jackie Schloss, who says, "Thank you, Alvaro. I thought it was a beautiful film covering so many issues and dealing with the complexities of relationships. I really enjoyed watching the film."
Thank you, Jackie.
So Retablo will be on Cinema on Demand on the Barbican site until Friday the 7th of August. On Friday the 7th of August, we'll also be joined by some more new release films, Pizza, Perfect 10, and a Brazilian film called Socrates, which if you liked Retablo, I'd really recommend you watch at home as well, because it's about a gay Brazilian teenager and shares a lot of the themes of Retablo. And we'll also have our next Forbidden Colors film, Jose, which is this beautiful, extraordinary gay Guatemalan romance, which kind of defies description. I really, really recommend you watch it. But just to say a huge, huge thank you to Alvaro for joining us tonight and for creating such a beautiful film. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody. Thank you, Alex.